Okay, the talk today is about what I've entitled Australia's Green History, and it's looking at the history of vegetation and the Australian flora over time. The talk is really going to focus on three kind of key questions, which is how do fossil plants get preserved? What parts of plants get preserved in the fossil record? And why are plants important, and why is paleobotany important? And so when we think of fossil plants, we have to think of the conditions in which they're preserved, and often we think of places like swamps, lakes, and deposits like this. And certainly these are the right conditions. They're low in oxygen, and the leaves sink to the bottom of the lake, and they get covered by fine sediment, and if the conditions are right, you'll get preservation of the fossils. But you can also get preservation of fossils due to volcanic activity. And so along the eastern coast of Australia, we've got lots of evidence of volcanoes and active episodes of volcanicity in the last 40 to 20 million years. And everybody involved in the Cross River Tunnel will know that a fossil tree trunk was found in the Cross River Tunnel, and that was covered up by a volcanic flow at that time, 200 million years ago. What I'll be looking at in this talk is more recently, the more recent flora of Australia and how it evolved. So what kind of plant parts can you expect to find when you're digging in the fossil record? And obviously you'll find leaves, you'll find examples of wood, you'll get evidence of pollen and spores, which are the reproductive parts of the plant, and very rarely you'll get flowers, and you'll also get seeds and fruits. So this is one of the leaves we've been working on recently. It's from a site up near Mackay in central Queensland, and it is a member of the Nothofagus family, or Nothofagus genus. And you can see the serrated margins on the leaves. You can also see there's a bit of insect damage as well on the leaves as well, which makes it quite interesting. The fossil is particularly exciting because we only find this particular genus of trees on the very tops of mountain ranges in southeast Queensland. And here we have it in central Queensland about 30 million years ago. But why do leaves get preserved? Because they're quite resistant, and leaves are designed to survive for quite a few years on the tree before they actually fall off. And they've got a layer of cuticle on the leaf that is a thickened layer, and that protects the soft tissue within inside the leaf. And very rarely we find evidence of mummified leaves, and this is an example of some mummified leaves from a site in Victoria. And these were found from the Anglesey coal mine. And you can see the actual cuticle of the plant is still preserved. So if you get the right conditions, and it doesn't happen very often, but if you get the right conditions, you can get whole leaves and flowers being preserved in these low energy lakes and deposits like this. And you very carefully get the leaves out of the sediment by using peroxide or other chemicals, and the leaves will actually float out. So that's a 40 million year old leaf. One of the things that we often find, and as with the Cross River Tunnel project, we found a tree trunk, but you find within modern woods you get different types, and you'll see that in the picture up here, you can see that there are two different types. One is a conifer wood, and that's on my right-hand side, and on the left is a flowering plant wood, and you can see how there are differences in the kinds of cells that you find within the wood. So as a paleobotanist, I can actually identify the types of plants from the wood structure that you see. And you can also see that there's evidence of growth rings as well. So that also provides us with information on the climate at the time as well. Occasionally, some woods are so interesting and so well preserved that you can actually identify which groups of plants they belong to. And this particular piece of wood is from a native vine of the grape family. And you can see that there's a bark and there's a soft tissue preserved along with the heartwood in the center of the vine. Flowers are rarely preserved, and there's a reason for that. While leaves are kind of thick and they've got an impervious cuticle layer, flowers are only designed to last for a day or 2 days. They fall off the tree and they're not designed to survive any longer than that. And they're very thin structures. So there's a reason why we don't find many flowers in the fossil record, but we do occasionally get them, and this is some drawings of some flowers from a site near Ipswich at Dinmore, and you can see that the petals have got fringes on them. And these features allow us to compare them to other plants, other living plants, that have got fringed petals as well, which is this coachwood flower you can see here. And the petals are these weird kind of five-fingered appendages on them, and they're quite distinctive. What we often find is evidence of pollen and spores. Now, you may not realize this, but we know that we suffer from asthma all the time at certain times of the year. And pollen and spores are remarkably resistant, and they get preserved in the fossil record, and they can also tell us about the kinds of plants that were living at that time. And this particular slide shows you some spores of a fern called Lygodium, which is the climbing fern. I guess for me, some of the most interesting parts we find belong to fruits and seeds. And these are some examples here from sites in central Queensland, and they're associated with volcanoes and volcanicity. So they were preserved due to volcanic flows at that time. And we recently, just in the last couple months, described what is the first fossil pandanus known from Australia. This is a picture of the fruit here, and this is a line drawing of it as well to show you the appearance. And if you aren't sure what pandanus looks like, this is a tree that you see along the coast of southeast Queensland, on the beaches and the surf beaches. It's a really quite beautiful tree. There's one really peculiar thing about this fruit, and that is its size. It's really, really small. It's really tiny. And yet, when we compare it to modern pandanus, it's a massive fruit. So the question, we can't answer the question completely, but we just know that we're fairly certain that is a mature fruit. And back 30 million years ago, fruits of this particular genus were much smaller than they are today. And thanks to a colleague at the museum, we recently did a reconstruction of what this fossil plant might have looked like. So this is the first time we've shown this illustration to anybody. So 30 million years ago is when these fossil pandanus fruits and the other seeds I mentioned were found. And at this time, Australia was moving northwards towards Southeast Asia. We'd separated from Antarctica, and ice was forming in Antarctica at that time. So Australia was a raft, it was an isolated raft moving northwards away from Antarctica. I want to show you now some footage to show you the kind of new techniques that we're applying in the study of paleobotany. And this is some work I did with colleagues, Anita Milroy and others. And it looks, using synchrotron data, it helps us look at the internal morphology of a fossil fruit that was collected from the same volcanic site in Queensland. And this is the fruit here. You can see the external morphology. And as the synchrotron imaging is shown, you're getting a view of the external appearance, you're getting a view of the external structures on the outside of the fruit. But we're now beginning to look into the internal structure, and we can see the internal anatomy of the fruit. And you can just begin to see that the ovules are there, and you're beginning to see the internal structure and the vascular tissue that leads to the ovules and things like that. So why are plants important? Well, all life on this planet and all terrestrial life on this planet is only possible because we are plants. So all insect life, all dinosaurs, all the animals that we associate with paleontology are invariably associated only here because we have plants. I guess the reason why I study fossils, the reason why I'm so excited by this area is that fossils help us explore and understand the origins and the history of life in Australia and the origins of the Australian flora and fauna. And Queensland Museum scientists have been working in this space now for over 100 years. So it's a really, and we've been recently doing some work and described the first sea scorpion known from Queensland, which is the animal you see here. And of course, none of this work is done without help from colleagues, and I'd like to acknowledge the different people who have contributed to this particular project over the last 5 to 10 years. Thank you so much.